Imagine a horizon that never ends, with the grass as a sea and the sky as a hammer, ready to crush any soul who dares to be weak. This is the 11th century Mongolian steppe, a land of nomadic shadows, where life is an eternal cycle of theft and revenge. But a hurricane is coming. It's not just the story of a man named Temujin, who would become the legendary Genghis Khan. It is the autopsy of a logistical revolution that shifted the very axis of the earth. From the dust of the steppe emerged a war machine so advanced it still haunts military textbooks today. Yet at the center of this storm of steel lies a human enigma, the Mongol woman. If Genghis was the architect of this empire, women like the warrior princess Khutulun were the pillars that held it upright. She was the woman who defeated 1,000 men in the wrestling arena, a princess who refused to be a trophy, embodying the purest spirit of a meritocracy where strength had no gender. Welcome to the rise of the great Khan and the eternal challenge of Khutulun.
Temujin was not born with a crown. He was born with a blood clot gripped tightly in his tiny, closed fist. To the Mongol elders, this was a terrifying omen, a sign of a warrior destined to drink the blood of his enemies. But the reality of his childhood was far from any mystic glory. It was a prison of grass and wind, where loyalty was worth less than a mouthful of meat. The year is 1171, and the world collapses. Temujin's father, Yesugei, the leader of a minor clan, is murdered, poisoned by a treacherous cup of hospitality offered by the Tatars. In that instant, the structure of Temujin's life shattered. The steppe is an implacable judge that admits no weakness, and upon his father's death, his own clan committed the ultimate act of betrayal. They abandoned his mother, Khutulun, and her 7 children, leaving them behind as the winter ice closed in. They took the cattle and the tents, condemning the family to a slow death by hunger. Imagine that scene, a lone mother against the infinite horizon, armed only with the sheer determination to keep her children alive. They survived by gathering roots, fishing in frozen rivers, and hunting field rats. This wasn't just a struggle for survival, it was the forge of a radical psychology. In this brutal isolation, Temujin learned the first law of his future empire. The world is divided between those who are loyal and those who die. He learned that order must be absolute, even if the price is the blood of his own blood. When his half-brother Bekter began to exert a tyrannical dominance, stealing the meager food the others struggled to find, Temujin didn't see a family dispute. He saw a systemic failure. Bekter represented chaos. Without hesitation, Temujin and his brother Kasar stalked him with the precision of hunters. They struck from the shadows, and Bekter died in the dust, killed by a brother who understood that for the group to survive, the rot must be removed without mercy. This was the birth of a new philosophy, meritocracy over the privilege of birth. Temujin grew up hating the aristocracy that had abandoned him, and that scar would soon become the law of the world. But fate wasn't finished with him. Just as Temujin began to reclaim his life and his faith, Borte, a rival tribe, the Merkits, smashed into his camp. In the screaming chaos, Temujin fled to save his own life, but Borte was taken as a war trophy. This was his breaking point. An ordinary man would have withered in shame, but Temujin did something no one on the steppe had ever achieved. He built a network of alliances based not on blood, but on utility. He rescued Borte, and in doing so, he discovered he could move armies. To the outside world, the Mongol advance looked like a force of nature, a divine punishment falling from the sky. But behind the mask of wild chaos was the most refined military engineering of its time. Genghis Khan didn't just lead, he designed. The centerpiece was the Mongol composite bow, a high-tech biological machine made of ox horn, sinew, and glue. It possessed a draw weight of 160 kilograms, allowing a rider to pierce armor at 300 meters. And then there was the engine of the empire, the Mongol horse. These weren't the pampered stallions of Europe. These were rugged survivors that could find grass beneath the snow. Genghis implemented a revolutionary remount system where each warrior kept 5 or 6 horses. This allowed them to cover 160 kilometers in a single day, moving with a speed that made it seem as though they could be in 2 places at once. Even their clothing was a feat of engineering. Under their leather, they wore pure silk. When an arrow hit, the silk wouldn't break. It would wrap around the arrowhead, allowing the barb to be pulled out cleanly without tearing the flesh. This was a system designed for total mobility. While other empires built walls to protect their past, the Mongols built roads to conquer their future. Genghis reorganized his entire society into a decimal grid, units of 10, 100, 1,000. In this new order, a blacksmith's son could become a general. It was a social reset that turned shepherds into the deadliest cavalry the world had ever seen, governed by the Yasa, a code of laws that turned nomadic chaos into the law of the land.
As the empire expanded, it became a global nervous system. Genghis created the Yam, the first high-speed postal network, where messengers rode until their organs nearly collapsed, bells jingling on their belts to signal for a fresh horse. Information now moved faster than the wind. But as the great Khan's life reached its end in 1227, the empire faced a paradox. To govern the world, the wolves of the steppe had to move into the palaces of the conquered. They began to wear the silks of the vanquished, and many feared the Mongol soul was softening. This tension gave birth to the legend of Khutulun, the granddaughter of the empire's glory and daughter of the traditionalist leader Kaidu. In an era where princesses were chess pieces moved by men, Khutulun was a storm. She was her father's most trusted general, riding at the head of 10,000 horsemen, a warrior who could snatch an enemy from his saddle as easily as a hawk takes a rabbit. She famously declared that no man would own her unless he could defeat her in a wrestling match. The stakes were high. If the suitor lost, he owed her 100 horses. Princes and champions came from across the continent, desperate to claim the most powerful woman in the steppe. One by one they fell. Legend says she eventually possessed a herd of 10,000 horses, 10,000 trophies of men who underestimated her strength. Khutulun wasn't just a princess, she was the living memory of the old ways, a reminder that in the Mongol DNA, merit was the only true royalty. The dust of the steppe has never truly settled. From the ruins of ancient walls to the data networks that connect us today, the blueprint of the Mongol Empire remains. They were the great pollinators of civilization, fusing Persian engineering with Chinese technology and nomadic grit. They reminded the world that a blood clot in a fist can become a scepter, and a girl in a wrestling ring can hold the spirit of an entire nation. The drums of the great Khan still echo in the wind, and the legacy of Khutulun proves that in the heart of the void, only the strong truly endure.